So you want to play a paladin in Seasonal Discovery, and you're wondering what to do, or how they might play, or how viable each of the specs are at phase 1, or even later in the game. If this is your first paladin, or if you're looking to see if anything has changed or different from Classic Era, Classic Wilds, or Retail, this quick start guide should set you on your way to become a beacon of light. Nope, no pun intended, in World of Warcraft. A paladin is a holy warrior. It has three specs: protection, holy, and retribution. We are currently still in phase 1 of Seasonal Discovery, so loads of people are still leveling. The spec I would recommend for leveling is retribution. This is your main damage or DPS spec, while protection will allow you to tank, and holy is your go-to healing spec. Now I say protection will allow you to tank. You can perfectly tank in phase 1 while being retribution. But let's start at the beginning. When you first create your paladin, you have a choice to make already. What race are you going for? The paladin can either be a human or a dwarf. At the moment, a human paladin would be better because of the racials you can have. The increased mace and sword skill are still a DPS increase on any level. However, this might change in the later phases, as Blizzard did indicate that the choice of race would not matter later on. So there might be a change that ups the dwarves to the same level there, who knows? Because Blizzard has said they want you to play the class and race you want to play in Seasonal Discovery. So we'll see about that. Now, that being said, I still very much like the diplomacy ratio the humans have, because that will give you an increased reputation gain. It's 10% on everything you do, making those rep grinds a little bit easier. The dwarves, on the other hand, do have stone form, which might come in handy in certain situations to stone form a bleed or a blind, for example, which makes them a bit better in PvP than you might think. Now, in the end, it's up to you if you like to play a human or dwarf. Like I said before, as with Blizzard's ideology, it should not matter, and I do think at max level this will be normalized. So play what you want to play. The best spec to leveling currently is still Retribution. Retribution is your main DPS spec, both in raids as in leveling. We first go with a little leveling spec, and then we'll just swap a few points around to go for a more raid-ready spec. The first few points to remain the same is the improved Blessing of Might. This gives you a 20% bonus to your Blessing of Might, so that's both onto you and onto the people you buff with. So you bring a bit more utility to a 5-man group or a raid. Now, the leveling spec also is improved Seal the Crusader. It gives you a bit more damage while leveling if you judge the mobs with the Seal of the Crusader. Then we have improved Judgment. This reduces your judgment spell by 2 seconds. And just a little bit more extra DPS you can squeeze out. Now, these points will differ from the rating spec, as I usually go for 2 points in Pursuit of Justice. This might look like a PvP talent, but in phase 1, and for most of phase 2, you'll be on foot. The 8% speed increase might be marginal, but it's nice to have. Then the next one is, of course, Seal of Command, and we finish off the spec with the remaining points in Conviction. And this is level 25, so this is 3 points in Conviction, give you 3% extra crit with melee weapons, and Seal of Command is your cookie cutter seal you go for as leveling spec. Now, for raiding, we will take some points out of Pursuit of Justice and put them in Conviction. So you have the full 5% extra crit on your melee weapons. That's the only difference between the leveling spec and the raiding spec for DPS. Playing a paladin can be fairly simple, as there aren't that many buttons to press, actually. When you are leveling, you'll start by using Seal of Righteousness and Crusader Strike. That's what you start with, and your Crusader Strike is your first rune. Typically, Paladin gameplay is to activate your seal, judge with your seal, activate your seal again, and then hit Crusader Strike. This changes a bit when you get a rune for the Seal of Martyrdom. Then you'll be using Seal of the Martyr instead of Seal of Righteousness. Once you get Seal of the Crusader, you might want to judge that on mobs that aren't dying as quickly as they should, as the judgment of the Crusader gives you extra holy damage on that target. So that scales well with your damage from Seal of Martyrdom or even Righteousness, and later on Seal of Command. Martyrdom will be your main seal until you get your Divine Storm rune, as they share the same rune slot, and then you'll be rocking with Divine Storm and Seal of Command. Your rotation, this is a normal rotation, so I'm excluding any engineering bombs or anything special, would be pop your Seal of the Crusader, judge that on a mob. That is, if you're in a group, just use on the bosses. Normal mobs die way too quickly for that. Then pop your Seal of Command, Divine Storm, Crusader Strike, and Judgment on cooldown. A few general tips. The Paladin can be a bit mana intensive if you're not using Seal of the Martyr, but you can get a bit of mana back by using Crusader Strike. So that might help you a bit on longer fights. While leveling, I would recommend to use Blessing of Wisdom, because it keeps you going for just that much longer. And the benefit you get from Blessing of Might is at least in phase 1, not big enough to outweigh the benefit you get from Blessing of Wisdom. It will keep you going for longer, you have to drink less, so that's a better experience overall. If you have a mob that is a runner or flees, judge it with Seal of the Justice, so you don't flee at a certain percentage. And when you get the rune of the Exorcist, you can also add Exorcism to your rotation, because with that rune, you'll be able to use Exorcism on any particular mob and have an instant crit on undeads. This does share a rune slot on the hands, which you might have been using for Rebuke, which is your interrupt. So you'll have to decide which one you use there. Do you want to have an interrupt on your hand slot, or do you want to have some more DPS on your with your exorcist? That will depend on your raid group, your group composition, or however you like to level, really. Because when you use exorcism on cooldown, this will drain your mana quite quickly. So be careful that when you're leveling in the open world, you'll have to drink more when you use the whole full rotation there. Now, last but not least, what gear should you be picking up when you're leveling as a Retribution Paladin? Now, this is only for phase 1 at the moment, so a few of these stats will be very hard to obtain in phase 1. They get easier with the more advanced gear at later levels. But we start with getting your hit to 9%, or 6% if you pick up the Precision talent in the protection tree. Now, hit is very difficult to come by in phase 1. There's a 2% hit you can get from Black Venom Death's gear, but that's about it. There's not much hit gear going on in the level 25 bracket. The main thing you'll be probably focusing on is strength. Strength is your main damage stat. This will influence your melee swings, your Crusader Strike, and a Divine Storm. So this is your main stat you're going to go for. The third one would be agility or crit. And then fourth would be intellect, because some intellect would be nice. As I said before, the normal rotation can be quite mana intensive. But as it's still level 25, it's very difficult to get all these stats on one piece of gear. I will, of course, make some follow-up videos on how this changes throughout the Seed Discovery server in Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4, up until the very end for the Paladin, and maybe for a couple of other classes if I manage to have some time to level them to max level. And this is a very basic, rudimentary guide on how to start your maybe first Paladin. And if it is your first, you'll have a blast. It's actually a very fun class to play. As we progress through Season of Discovery, the other specs become more and more viable as well. Holy will become much better once you get Illumination. At the moment, Holy Paladins aren't in a great place as a main healer, but once you get Illumination and level 40, 50, and 60, you'll be a much stronger healer than you are in Phase 1. Protection will also start to shine in the later levels. At the moment, you can still be a main tank as Retribution. It's even better because the gain you get, the threat gain you get from consecration is too minimal to actually pick that up. But I'm sure from, I'd say 50 onwards, your protection paladins will be much better than they are in retribution. And also for mitigation, it would be better if you go protection at that level. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like. And if you like the content, feel free to subscribe. Many more of these guides will follow in the future for the Paladin class and other classes. Thank you for watching. Bye now.